أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm here with my good friend and brother Sheikh Harris of Afur, and welcome to this new podcast that we are setting up. So this is the first episode. So welcome to Ilm Discussions, Ilm Chats with Eissa and Harris. So today, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to briefly speak about a subject that we believe is important, and it's the subject of Ijtihad. So Sheikh Harris needs no introduction at this point. I think we should get into the topic right away. So Sheikh Harris, my first question to you is, who is a Mujtahid and what is Ijtihad? Explain to us, and why do you think this is important? Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته يا شيخ عيسى, and assalamu alaikum to all brothers and sisters who are listening to our podcast. As Ustad Eissa has mentioned, we are starting a new podcast, which is Ilm Chats with Eissa and Harris, inshallah ta'ala, in which we will be discussing a variety of topics. If you have any idea, anything you are curious or would like to know, leave it in the comment, and inshallah we will address. So before I begin, I would just like to ask everybody to subscribe to our channel, to share this video, inshallah, so that we may win thawab from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that the ilm, the knowledge that we are teaching, gets spread to all four corners of the earth. Alhamdulillah. Now, to answer your first question, Ustad Eissa, who is a mujtahid? So the word mujtahid comes from the Arabic word jahada, okay? And jahada means to strive for something, to work hard to achieve a goal. And mujtahid, basically, is someone who does ijtihad, so someone who works hard to achieve a certain objective. Now, in Islam, we use the term mujtahid. So in Islam, we use the word mujtahid to refer to someone who has malaka or qudratun ilmiya, that he has a very good academic background and knowledge. He is well grounded in the sciences of Islam, in furu', in the main sciences of Islam, which is fiqh, which is hadith, tafsir, seerah, and all of the main sciences in Islam. He is well grounded, and he is able to answer questions without referring to anybody else. He is able to arrive to conclusions on his own accord. So if you would ask him a question, he will answer you with evidence. He will say, Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. He's not going to quote someone else, because he is able to do it himself. So, summarizing, I know I'm carrying on a lot. A mujtahid is anyone who has a strong academical background in Islam and is able to arrive to conclusions in furu', conclusions in matters of Islam by himself, without having to recur, or without having to go back to other secondary sources. Now,
Naam, barakallahu feek. Interesting. I mean, in the books of usul, al-ijtihad and al-taqlid is an entire chapter. So obviously we don't have time to really cover a lot of the issues pertaining to ijtihad. There are shurut, conditions of ijtihad, which you alluded to. So a lot of that is important. But to get to the crux of the issue, right? So you mentioned who is a mujtahid, what is ijtihad, in a very summarized fashion. Why do you think it's important? So this was the last part of my question. Why do you think it's important for people to understand what a mujtahid or what ijtihad is, and who a mujtahid is?
Okay, so very good question. Why is it important for us to be speaking about this? For us to be bringing to the attention of the people of who a mujtahid is and what ijtihad is. This is because a mujtahid is the person that we have to refer and go back to. A mujtahid is the person that we will ask questions and he will answer. So we don't just ask or refer to any person that studied Islam or claims to have studied Islam. We go for those who are the mujtahids, those people who have reached very, very high levels of knowledge. They have understood almost every single thing, if not every single thing about Islam, so they are wise enough to give us a conclusion. Now, this is important because people nowadays just go around asking everybody and anybody. And the Prophet ﷺ has told us about this. He has spoken about the Ruwaybida. The Ruwaybida, those people who have no knowledge. They act like they are ulama, but they're not. And the Prophet said, it's in the hadith, where the Prophet is speaking about the Akhirul Zaman. And the Prophet said, اتَّخَذَ النَّاسَ رُؤُوسًا جُهَالًا, that the people will start learning from ignorance, those people who have no knowledge. And he called them ar-ruwaybida. So it's very important for us to distinguish a mujtahid from a ruwaybid, okay? Because a ruwaybid will only pretend to have knowledge, and he will give you wrong information. He will come to wrong conclusions because he does not have or he does not know the correct tools to arrive to a correct and complete answer that a mujtahid would. Sometimes a mujtahid will take days to answer a question. Why? Because he is really pondering, looking in every single way. Okay, he's looking at every single angle to that question to arrive to a conclusion. As for a ruwaybid, he will just answer every single question. He won't even ponder. There's no hikmah, etc. So it's really dangerous for Muslims to learn from people who are not well grounded in Islam. And there are a lot of people who pretend to be. Unfortunately, it's not good. This is not aimed on any specific person. We're just quoting the hadith of the Prophet and seeing that, this is what is happening nowadays. So it's very important for all Muslims to know the difference between a true mujtahid and to know the difference between one who only pretends and he actually doesn't have a lot of knowledge. Now,
Barakallahu fiqh. I mean, those are good points. It reminds me of Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah. He was asked a question regarding what's the dalil of al-ijma', in the Quran and Sunnah. And it took him like a few days to go through the entire Quran, from A to Z, and he did it like a few times to come to find the dalil and to come to a conclusion, right? And it just goes to show like the work the mujtahideen would put in just for one question. Obviously, as you mentioned, nowadays, in many cases, that doesn't happen. So something that's interesting, right? In usul, so look, you know me. I'm kulliyat sharia, you're kulliyat hadith. A lot of my, a lot of my, answers or a lot of my additions. Let's put it this way: a lot of my additions, they're going to be very usuli based, right? Mm-hmm. So I find it interesting. I want your take on this really quickly. In usul, people are divided into 2 or maybe 3 categories: al-muqallid, which is the follower; al-mujtahid, which is the mujtahid, as you just mentioned, the one who has the knowledge to come to his own conclusions. Some add a 3rd category, which is al-muttabi', which some say is like a student of knowledge. Some say al-muttabi' and al-muqallid is the same. Al-muhim, there's a lot of semantics and khilaf. But what I find interesting is that, nowadays people will ascribe a lot of different names. Or, sorry, let me reiterate. A lot of people will ascribe different meanings to names and titles. So, for example, you'll say, like, I'll call somebody sheikh, right? And they'll be like, oh, I'm not a sheikh, I'm not a sheikh. Or, like, somebody will hit you up, for example, and say, are you really an ustadh? Right? Okay. Like, what's the proof you're an ustadh? Right? So my point is, right? From a nusuli point of view, all of these titles mean nothing. Sheikh means nothing. From a cultural point of view, sure, right? Mm-hmm. Culturally, sure, it can have a meaning, whatever, right? Maybe sheikh in Saudi Arabia has a different meaning than sheikh in the UK or in France or in Africa, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, like we've been in Saudi Arabia, everybody's sheikh.
No. Yeah.
Our teachers call us sheikh, we call them sheikh. The little kid down the road, we call him sheikh.
Yeah.
So my point is, I find it interesting that these titles, people ascribe so much meaning to them, when from an usuli point of view, the only category that exists basically is muqallid and mujtahid. Right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Okay. So, now I have heard this that from an usuli point of view, there are only two categories, which is that of a mujtahid and a muqallid.
Or a third. You can add a third.
Yes, but let me tackle these two first, okay?
Okay.
Because a lot of modern people they promote this ideology that you're either a muqallid or you're a mujtahid. So let me just start by mentioning what a muqallid is. Okay, it's the exact opposite of a mujtahid, because a mujtahid is someone that everything he does, everything he says, he has an evidence for everything. And a muqallid is that one who has no evidence for anything. Okay, he is someone who follows with no dalil.
Right.
الذي يتابع أو يقلد بغير دليل. There's no dalil. Okay, so he doesn't require a dalil for him to do something. The teacher will just say, "Do this," or he will read a book, "Do this," and he will do it. I believe that there is a third category. And if we go back to the original books of usul, from the muhaddithun, from the Ahl al-Hadith, we will find that it wasn't clear that you're either a mujtahid or you are a muqallid, which is what many people promote nowadays. You can be between mujtahid and muqallid, which
Right.
is someone who is able to do ijtihad in certain masail. Like I believe and I hope that me and you are in this category. Why? Because as students of knowledge, at least the way Jamia Islamia taught us was to try to be independent thinkers. I mean, to reach that level of ijtihad, to understand how the ulama they how they dealt with these issues, so that we were able to to understand and to formulate not formulate our own opinions, but select which ones we think are the best.
Naam, I
So
mean, I guess we could say, sorry for cutting you off. I guess we could
yeah,
say, and many of the teachers say this, Jamia Islamia and other universities, you know, Islamic universities, they give you the keys to ijtihad.
yeah, exactly,
So they give us the tools to do it, and then later on, you know, we hope to get
to that level,
to that
inshallah.
level. But you're kind of getting to my next question, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Linked.
okay,
You mentioned something, right, which
yeah,
is important, and I don't know if a lot of people understand this mas'ala or this issue. Can you be a mujtahid in one field, one chapter, one mas'ala, one science, or do you have to be a mujtahid in everything? I think a lot of people understand this. Just this question. I don't think a lot of people even ask themselves this question, right? So to them, you know what people say usually, like especially in the West, they say the scholars, right? The scholars,
hmm,
and they just make it like a very general term. They don't really differentiate, you know, what that means. So they'll say, for example, well, he's like a scholar in general,
no,
okay?
no,
As if you can only be a scholar in everything. And if you're not a scholar in everything, that's the implication for many, I think. And if you're not a
yes,
scholar in everything, then automatically you're not a scholar.
yeah,
So what do you think? And this mas'ala in usul is called tajazzu al-ijtihad, or hal al-ijtihad yatajazza. Like, can
yes.
you be partly mujtahid? Go ahead. What do you think?
So, according to these scholars, forgive the irony, according
Okay.
to these scholars, and when I say these scholars, at least when us tulabul ilm, when we say these scholars said, we mean the classical ulama of Islam that are accepted by all. Okay?
Right.
These are these scholars. So when I say these scholars, I don't mean they're from a specific country, from a specific place. I
Mhm.
mean these are the scholars that are widely accepted as these are the mu'tamad scholars
Naam.
of Islam. Okay, we have Al-Raghib Al-Asbahani, I believe, which wrote a book on usul. We have Al-Qarrafi, wrote a book on usul. Al-Shatibi wrote a book on usul. And they all seem to agree that it is possible, very much possible, that you can be a mujtahid in certain fields and not mujtahid in other fields. And Ash-Shatibi even says that you can be a mujtahid in one field, in one mas'ala. So you can be a mujtahid in Babul Miyah, not even Kitab al-Tahara, just Babul Miyah. Or you're a mujtahid in Fara'id al-Wudu. So you can be a mujtahid in certain issues. And what we believe, and what our teachers teach us, and we see this from Ibn Taymiyyah, from even Imam al-Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, etc., they say that when the sunnah is clear to you, then you're not allowed to go against it. Okay? So what they're basically saying is, once you reach that level of understanding, okay? And let me just take a step back, because perhaps I should have said this when I was defining a mujtahid, etc. Now, for you to be a mujtahid, okay, a lot of people wonder, okay, how can you be a mujtahid, etc. So, alhamdulillah, we had the opportunities to be with mujtahids, okay, and we kind of like got an idea, okay, this is how they got to that level. They told us, as you said, they showed us the way. Now, one of the things you need to do to be a mujtahid is you need to memorize ahadith al-ahkam, all of them. You need to memorize all the ahadith al-ahkam. You need to
Now,
memorize all the ayat of ahkam. You need to know
can I
the
stop you right there?
yeah.
Just really quick. To be
Yeah.
fair, I just want to, because you know me, usul and khilaf, and just in parenthesis,
No.
to many of the ulama, hifth is not even a shart. So Ibn Qudama mentions in Rawdat al-Nadhr that hifth is not a shart. You have to know where to find them, though,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
But to be fair, many of the ulama do say hifth is a shart. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify that.
Okay. I would stick with the hifth is a shart, just because we want afdaliyah. We want what's best. And it's better for you to be a hafiz than not to be a hafiz. Okay.
True.
So you need to memorize ayat al-ahkam, ahadith al-ahkam. You need to know usul al-fiqh, which are the main books in usul al-fiqh. You need to know qawaid al-fiqhiyah, and you need to know furu', which are the fatawa the previous ulama in the past have given, so that you can know like how close you are to their ijtihad or not. Okay. Now, with this in mind, in this process that you are studying, because you aim, inshallah, to become a mujtahid, okay? In this process, of course, you are going to get to the part of mujtahid nisbi, because you've just finished kitab al-tahara. So, okay, fine. So you know kitab al-tahara. Now you need to study kitab al-salah. Then you study salah. Now you know both of them. Now you need to revise them so you don't forget them, and so on and on. So as you grow, okay? So I believe it's impossible for you to assume that you can jump from muqallid to mujtahid mutlaq. It doesn't make sense, okay?
Right.
So
Right.
as in the journey, you are mujtahid nisbi. You are mujtahid nisbi. Now, when you're mujtahid nisbi, I don't know if you're going to ask me this, but are you allowed to like sit in a chair and give fatwa to people? I don't think so. Okay, that's another question completely. If I say you're mujtahid nisbi, I'm not saying write a book. I'm not saying go on and on YouTube start giving fatawa up and down. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that you are able to identify the sunnah by yourself, so you should follow it. Okay.
Okay. So
Now,
hold up.
yeah,
So I get what you're saying, right?
yeah,
And to be fair, okay, you mentioned the shurut of ijtihad. So again, from a Sui perspective, there's a lot of discussion on what the shurut of ijtihad are exactly. But I think you summarized them well. But my issue is this: somebody that is mujtahid nisbi or has has ijtihad in a juz of the sharia, like a mas'ala or a bab or whatever. I agree he can't give fatawa left and right. But if somebody were to ask him, for example, somebody were to ask him a question in his field of expertise or in the mas'ala, let's just say just happens to be the mas'ala of his expertise, don't you think he can give fatwa?
Well, if I was that person, I would abstain from giving a fatwa unless there was no one else better than me, okay, to give a fatwa. There's also one thing we need to consider, okay?
Okay.
And this is the fact that you are a mujtahid nisbi, okay? If you are mujtahid nisbi in certain masail, This means that you have at least usul and qawaid down. You know these things, okay? You don't know half of usul, you know all of usul. Because when you cover Kitab al-Tahara, like we both did, you do notice that all the ahkam of usul you apply in Kitab al-Tahara. All of the
Right.
ahkam of qawaid you will apply there. So if you finish one bab, okay, so you already have the idea of what works. You just have to apply the same rules and principles to every single mas'ala that will come after that.
Right.
Correct?
So you're saying that like a mujtahid nisbi, he still does need the basics, the general basics,
Yes, he
right?
does need the general basics. It's not like he's a mujtahid in one mas'ala in Kitab al-Tahara. I mean, I did say that, but that's purely theoretical, because if
Right.
you understand, for example, and one of the first masa'ils in Kitab al-Tahara, the difference between ma'ul qalil, a lot of water, and ma'ul qalil, and a small amount of water, now that is already a huge usul lesson.
I
That's a
think you meant
huge.
ماء الكثير and ماء القليل.
What did I say? I
ماء
said
القليل
kathir.
وماء القليل.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, kathir and qalil, which is a lot of water and a small amount of water. Now, when you cover that mas'ala in itself, okay, that's already a big part of usul. So you still need this, the usul and qawaid for you to be this mujtahid nisbi. Otherwise, you won't be able to come to a conclusion. Okay.
Agreed, agreed. I mean, I think what it is that there are some masail that you study at a basic level, and I think many of the students of knowledge, and I think our experience is like that. Like you can't be an expert in every masala, not in the beginning at least, right?
Yes.
But there are some masail that you tend to focus on. Maybe you do extra research, you go check the books. Maybe your teacher, and this happened to us a lot. Maybe our teacher asked us to write a research paper on like a masala, right? On an
Yeah.
issue.
Yes.
And I think this is where you start like going further than the basics, right? Is when you start doing that extra work on certain fields or certain masail or whatever. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the case. Because if you want to get that level of ijtihad, you definitely need that extra work. Let me tell you something. One of my teachers, called Duwaish Hafidahullah, told me once. So that was me, the beginning of my journey, talab al-ilm, very, very foolish. And I come to him with some shubuhat I came across on YouTube. And I said, Sheikh, I want to make a rad on this. Okay. Could you please help me out? And he looked at the questions, and he said, look, I can help you answer the shubuhat with one condition. And I asked, what, teacher? And he said, the condition is that you don't make a rad on this, because it will just waste your time. Now, looking back at it, the mere fact that I had to go back to him to deal with those shubuhat showed that I was not ready at all. Like, at all. I was definitely not ready. And another teacher told me something else. He said, look, write books, write research papers, and don't publish anything until you're 40 years old. Then, when you're 40, just read everything again and decide if you want to publish or not. So,
Wow.
another thing that is taken into consideration in Ijtihad, perhaps books of usul don't really mention this a lot, because I suppose people just assume that it has to come with its maturity. You have to be mature. Like, you're not going to be a mujtahid while you're 20, while you're 25. I mean, if you're
I
30,
mean,
it's very
to be
rare.
fair,
You
maybe the
need
20 years
maturity.
old, maybe the 20 years of age regarding people today, sure. But sometimes you read about the 20 years old of the past, and you're
No,
like,
of course, with the ulama, the past,
the ulama of the
their
past,
lifestyle was completely different.
right?
But in our day and age, 20 years is definitely not mature enough. So even though
Yeah,
you have,
I think.
and plus it takes, I think what my teachers were trying to tell us is that it takes time. Some things will only occur with time and experience.
Right.
And
No, I
I
agree. I
think
agree.
this is also very important for ijtihad. Nowadays, what we do have because of social media is that we have a lot of people just on social media, and maybe because they want to get views, maybe because they want to help Islam and they don't know how, and they're just saying nonsense on the internet, things that they should otherwise have said in private. Now they're saying it in public. This is due to lack of experience, lack of knowledge, lack of maturity, lack of a lot of things. Okay,
Humility. You can add humility to that list.
I could add humility as well. Yes.
But okay, you're getting to my next question then,
No,
which is one of the last questions before we wrap up.
no,
And I guess it's very important seeing the current state of the ummah and current events and social media. So we do have the rise of a new phenomenon,
yeah,
which is the social media sheikh
no,
or the YouTube da'i
yes,
or the TikTok sheikh, right, or the Instagram ustaz,
mhm,
right? And what we mean by this, now, first of all, hold up. Social media has revolutionized, has changed the game because
yeah,
now everybody can give an opinion,
yes,
okay? And nobody's really there to like check or double check or even to advise, right? And you go back to the Salaf, right? And you read stuff like, for example, Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah, before he even started giving fatwa. At least 40, 50, I think some narrations mention 60, something like this. Al-Muhim, 60 of his mashayikh gave him permission, right? Like they evaluated him and then gave him permission to give fatwa, right? I mean, there's a lesson in that. It goes to show that they didn't think this was, a small issue. To them, this was a big deal. So you better be ready. Contrast that to what we have nowadays. You open up a Twitter account, you've read a few books in English or not in Arabic, you've seen a few YouTube videos. All of a sudden, you're posting opinions. In the beginning, you start posting opinions of mashayikh. Okay, so in the beginning, you try to say, well, I'm only posting the mashayikh, right? That's how it usually starts for many. And in the end, you're just posting opinions. At some point, they're your own opinions. At some point, you're responding to people, acting as a sheikh. You're giving fatwa left and right. Some people start making videos, right? They've never really went through a curriculum of knowledge. Start making YouTube videos, TikTok videos, 10-second fatwa, right? Keeping in mind that a fatwa needs a certain amount of research, at least on the hal of the person, right? At least on the hal. And if you're going to give a general fatwa, to be honest, like 10 seconds, I don't know, just TikTok in general, I don't see how it can really be that beneficial from an ilm point of view. Like I even tried to open up a TikTok and I just couldn't do it. Like I just couldn't get into the game because that's not how knowledge works. You can't have 10-second snippets and call that knowledge, right? I don't know what you think about this. But anyway, this is the musiba of nowadays. And you can tell me if you think it's a musiba or if
mhm,
I'm tripping, right? You can tell me if I'm going too far with this. But
yeah.
the musiba of today is that everybody has an opinion, everybody's talking, and a lot of people are getting famous whilst they have very, very dubious backgrounds when it comes to knowledge. What do you think about this?
Okay, now, so first of all, the fact that we have ignorant people or people who just want to voice out their opinions, I think this has happened at the time of the Sahaba. This has happened with the Tabi'un, like Wasil bin Ata, when someone asked Hassan al-Basri a question and he decided to answer, even though he was a student in the halaqah. So this is something quite old. The difference is that there wasn't social media back then, so you didn't have a platform. Nowadays, there's a platform. So there's a platform for you to expose your ideas. And instead of people using these social medias to expose good ideas, they use it to expose bad ideas. But I think this is basically just how humans are. Now, I think that every Muslim out there, every person should look at his niyyah, his intention. Of course, everyone is going to say that, oh, my niyyah is good, etc. But is it really? I mean, you have to think. Okay, you have to think. Now, I believe that anyone who's not a student of knowledge, and when I say student of knowledge, I mean someone who has gone through the formal and traditional way of learning Islam, not someone who like takes time off from his job or from his studies to go to a halaqah and he sits down. Sure, you're learning Islam, but you're learning it in part time. So you're a part time student of knowledge. You're not a full fledged student of knowledge. Okay, there's a big difference right there in the terms of your sincerity, in terms that Allah chose you, because we have to also understand and accept that the people that went out to study, they were selected by Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not that they wanted to go, Allah chose them. And we need to respect that and honor those people so long as they stay true to what they have learned. So with this in mind, we have people in YouTube that we know that they did not go through the formal the formal ways of knowledge. And one easy way for you to spot this is the adab, the akhlaq, the conduct. You see, when a student of knowledge speaks, someone who's been with a mashaykh will speak with humility. And someone who has not been with a mashaykh, the part-time student of knowledge, he watches YouTube here and there, he learns Arabic, and so he went through some courses, etc. Now he thinks, okay, I learned Islam, alhamdulillah. Now I'm on YouTube giving fatwas up and down, or not even fatwas, just random thoughts about Islam. Thinks he's Socrates or something like that. So he decided to expose his ideas. Now, this is not good. I don't think it is good. And I think it is even worse that people are going and listening to these type of things, okay? Why? Because we should be listening and honoring the mashaykh, the true mashaykh of Islam and the true tulabul ilm, okay? A talibul ilm is someone who is known that he has gone through the formal and traditional ways of learning. And of course, this always changes by time to time. Right now is you have to go to a recognizable institution and you study there, you complete the program. Alhamdulillah, you are now considered that you're talib al-ilm because you completed that program. Now these people on YouTube, I think it's a musibah. I think it's not good because it's getting worse as time gets by, because they read books, they take things out of context, they don't understand, they don't know the whole picture. Okay, now looking back at what my teachers told me, okay, so let me mention what Sheikh Salih Al-Usaymi Hafidhullah said once. He said that nowadays there's a trend, and this trend is called fiqh al-tarjih. This is what someone who's not a student of knowledge or who's not a good student of knowledge will do. He will say that I have to everything that in every mas'ala I'll do ijtihad and I'm going to get to my own tarjih. So he called it,
I think he called it fiqh al-dalil.
yeah, fiqh al-dalil. He called it fiqh al-dalil or fiqh al-tarjih.
Yeah.
And then he said, at the end of the day, all you're doing is you're just following Ibn Taymiyyah's opinions, which is what a lot of people do. So at the end of the day, you're only going to go back to another mujtahid. Now, a talibul ilm is going to be aware of this, because after you study these masail so many times, you come to the conclusion there's no way out of it. You just have to pick one of the madahibs, one of the opinions. Now, this maturity will only come to someone who has constantly been in contact with books and mashaykh. So what my teacher was trying to tell me when he said that, write books until you're 40 years old, is that when you're in the beginning, you're only looking at a part of Islam. But as you grow and you research more, you'll start to look at the big picture. And once you see the big picture, you're going to be like, wow, now I understand that everything is connected. If I give a fatwa in tahara, it has to be consistent. The rules that I apply have to be consistent in every single mas'ala. So if I say something in tahara, it's going to affect nikah. It's going to affect buyu'. It's going to affect zakat. It's going to affect a lot of things. So I really have to take this into consideration before giving an opinion. Now, someone who's not that well grounded, and this there's a name of this syndrome, the James Kruger effect. The less you know about something, the more simple you think it is. And the more you know about something, the more complicated you know it is. Like me and you think it's easy to fix a car because we never fixed cars. But if we did, then we'd know how it's complicated. So alhamdulillah, I don't want to go too long because this is not supposed to be a long podcast. So yeah, this is what I have to say, basically.
No, I'm agreed. It's very interesting to me that, a lot of people, subhanAllah, they paint a lot of masail when it comes to Islam, fiqh, and stuff like this. They paint it as black and white. It's like, khalas, hadith, ya sheikh. Or khalas, like ayah, and that's it. Or they'll have a fatwa and they'll do taqleed of that fatwa, and if you go against it, then it's a big problem. And that shows, honestly, for the most part, that shows a lot of ignorance. Like, because and this is my experience, and I think it's yours as well. The more you study, not only do you become more humble, right? Because you're like, okay, there's a lot I don't know. But it also opens and broadens your horizons and scope. And you understand that, okay, things are not necessarily black and white. Now, don't get me wrong. Some things in Islam are black and white, right? But not everything, and probably not the majority, especially when it comes to fiqh. Probably not the majority. I mean, most masail, are mukhtalafun fiha, and that's why the books of khilaf are so big. So I think how do you mentioned how do you spot somebody who's dubious? You spot them, as you mentioned, by their adab, and I agree with that. I think a lot of these sheikhs on the internet, these so-called sheikhs. When I say sheikhs, I mean like the TikTok sheikhs, the YouTube sheikhs, that in reality are not how we understand, how we define a sheikh or how it's defined in our culture. Because as I said, at the end of the day, you're either mujtahid, muqallid, or muttabi', according to some. They add muttabi'. So my point is, adab is a big one, and I think I'll add to that as well. So just like you mentioned, somebody who's been through some sort of education when it comes to Islam, who has had teachers. You mentioned somebody who has gone through some sort of institution. I believe that that's not necessarily a shart, even though that's usually a very good sign because you've went through a curriculum. But if you sit down with scholars and they educate you, it's not just you sit in the majlis, right, and you listen to the scholars and then get up and say, "Khalas, I'm a big talib ilm now." Like the scholars personally educate you, then I think that's also part of that. And I wanted to add something else that's very important. I don't think people understand this: sacrificing for the knowledge, right? And I think a lot of these TikTok sheikhs and YouTube sheikhs and stuff like this, wallahu a'lam, I don't know their life for the most part, but it's very dubious to what extent they have sacrificed when it comes to this knowledge, to what extent effort has been put in. Traveling is a big part of that sacrifice, which is why many of the Salaf used to say that a mark, the mark, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the mark of knowledge is traveling, right? Even though it's not necessarily a shart, but it's a very good sign because it shows that you have sacrificed and stuff like this. So I think a lot of these factors end up at the result of somebody, having gone through a formal process, or somebody has gone through a formal process of becoming, a student of knowledge, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala knows best. But I think, wallahu a'lam, unfortunately, a lot of these, the du'at on YouTube and stuff like this, and on TikTok and on Instagram and whatever, I think that's not the case for many of them, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala knows best. But the reason why we're speaking about this is because, let's be honest, me and you, we get online a lot, and to be honest, what's funny? Me and you were not even that active compared to a lot of people,
Yes.
but we do notice that a lot of dubious opinions are being,
Are being pushed through.
are
Yeah,
being pushed,
exactly.
are being spread. A lot of dubious akhlaq, a lot of dubious manners, a lot of dubious ways of thinking, a lot of dubious manahij, right?
Yes.
And I go on Twitter all the time, and I don't talk much, right? Because I don't
Mm-hmm.
have time, right?
No.
Uh, but I observe a lot, and
Okay.
honestly, like the most of the time I'm scrolling, I'm like, I just get frustrated at what I see
Yeah.
because a lot of it is dubious based on what I've studied in Medina,
Yes,
and just
exactly.
nah.
It's dubious and it's inconsistent, okay?
Right.
Because, you have people claiming to be traditional Muslims, but they are promoting secularist ideologies, okay?
That's
So
true.
you have people who claim to be from one line of thought and then they're promoting a different line of thought's idea. So there's a lot of inconsistencies, and I believe that this is due to immaturity that a lot of people have, into how exactly you are supposed to think, because learning how to think is actually an art. You need to know how to think so that you don't fall into inconsistencies, okay? And we do see that a lot on the internet. And alhamdulillah, we just hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides the brothers, especially those who
Mm-hmm.
took their time to listen to our podcast, inshallah
Nah.
ta'ala,
Yeah.
and that he guides us as well, to guides us to be on the straight path, to be on the right mindset when it comes to Islam. No.
Of course, we don't obviously we're not saying here that we know everything and others know nothing. We're not saying that we're better than others, but we do find that it is a problem that a lot of non-mujtahideen, if you want to put it that way,
Yeah.
are very, very liberal when it comes to issuing fatwa and giving out opinions and speaking about Islam. So
Mhm.
we felt that it was very important to discuss the issue because it can be dangerous,